One of the biggest reasons for business failure is debt. Now, in the previous videos, I talked about 4 different qualitative criteria, which if you can use in your selection framework, then it will ensure that you weed out most of the bad ideas. In this one and the next video, I'm going to introduce you to very easy to spot quantitative criteria which you can use for your selection of businesses. Now, we all are familiar with debt. We often take a mortgage when we are buying a home, and as long as we have enough earnings to service the debt, that is to pay the monthly interest and the mortgage payments, we are fine. The problem happens when we lose our job and in turn our earning power, and we are unable to pay the mortgage. So in case of a business, it's no different. As long as the business has enough operating earnings to make its interest payments, then it's good for the business. But the problem happens during a recession when the operating earnings of a business shrink and they're no more enough to pay its interests. That's where the problem happens. So, the best way to ensure that you never land in a situation like this is just to select businesses with very low debt or no debt. That's even better. Now, most of us have full-time jobs and we do not have the time to go deep into the balance sheet and financial statements of a business. So the easiest way for us to ensure that our businesses can go through the various business cycles is to choose businesses that use very little debt to run its operations. And the easiest way to ensure that, I would say, just go to Morningstar and look at the debt to equity ratio of your business. Now, I typically do not like businesses which has a debt to equity ratio of more than 0.5. But an even better ratio to look at is your interest coverage ratio. What does that mean? The interest coverage ratio is nothing but your operating earnings of the business over the interest expense. And for me, anything below 10 is something that I would like to stay away from. So that's the simplest way to ensure that you select a business which can easily ride through the different business cycles. And we know that businesses go through cycles. There are times when the sales are very good, but then there are times during recessions when the sales volumes fall and the operating profit of the business falls. So you need to own a business which can at least make its interest payments during such periods of recession. The next criteria that we use to look for businesses is the gross margin. The gross margin is nothing but the gross profit of the business expressed as a percentage of the revenue. And the gross profit is arrived at by subtracting the cost of the goods that the business is selling from the total sales. Now, why is this important? The gross margin gives us an idea of how well the business is able to protect its turf. It tells us how strong the pricing power of the business is. Now think about it. If I study the income statements of a business over a 5 to 10 year period, and if I see that the business is able to retain its gross margin, that tells me that the business is able to fend off competitors. And it does not have to offer excessive discounts to continue to sell its products. It also tells me that the business is able to pass on the price increases due to inflation to its customers, and that's a great thing. However, if I notice that the gross margins of a business is shrinking over the years, then that is a red flag for me. that will immediately tell me that the business is not being able to protect its turf, and maybe competitive pressures are putting a pressure on its margins, or the business does not have a pricing power. So as the cost of goods that it's selling is steadily going up due to inflation, the business is not being able to pass on that price increase to its customers. And that is not a good thing. Let me give you an example. I'm pretty sure you know about this company, GoPro. They make fantastic cameras. But having a good product is not necessarily same as having a good business. Go and check out the gross margins of GoPro over the last several years and see how they have been shrinking. It, it would clearly tell you that GoPro has been a target of competitors, and it has clearly not been able to retain its turf. And that's a classic example of a business that does not have pricing power. And that's the reason, at least looking at the gross margins of a business over a 5 to 10 years time is very important while selecting the business. So as long as you keep in mind that the business that you're selecting does not use too much debt and it is able to retain its gross margins, you have immediately ensured that your business is in a much stronger position, and you would be happy to own a business like that for a very long time. In the next video, I'm going to talk about two other quantitative criteria that if you keep in mind, I can promise that your long-term results will be extremely satisfactory. Thank you very much for your time.